free to say those things.
Let's go to the
Okay, second thing is, the early service people knew, I don't know how, but I do have a concussion that I'm just about over. I had a little 360 turn accident in my truck, not with another vehicle Thursday night, spun around 360 degrees and went in between trees and missed another tree by a foot. Sat for 15 or 20 minutes till I collected myself and drove home. Did not go to...
It's a benefit of the job, brother.
It's the benefit of the job. That's one of the advantages, right? Not die. Okay, there you go. So yes, actually the truth is I got the concussion because I didn't go to the doctor and my wife got mad at me and she whacked me. So anyhow, yeah, I'm over it though.
When did that happen?
Thursday night. Yeah, so it's okay. Yeah. So anyhow, I just thought I'd just get that out of the way so that is tended to, all right? Okay, good. Now, let us talk a little bit. 2004 it was. I saved my notes because the very most interesting thing happened on TV in 2004. The American Film Institute did a wonderful job of listing the 100 worst people in movies, evil people, and the 100 best people, heroes and heroines in movies. And the obvious suspects are on the list of the bad guys, right? Hannibal Lecter would be one, obviously. Norman Bates from Psycho. Darth Vader, of course, has to be on there. And the Wicked Witch of the West. All right, makes the top 100 list. Hey, on the good person list, of course, you have Indiana Jones, Robin Hood, James Bond, although James Bond I think should be a little bit iffy. But some strong women, Norma Ray, Marge Gunderson, the pregnant police officer from Fargo, Erin Brockovich. You know, so there's some good characters in there. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, they made the good guy list.
Good.
I know, that's what I was thinking. What do you mean good? Just because you happen to think they're hot. I know that.
Exactly.
But they shouldn't be. They should be on the bad guy list, no question about it. And the shark in Jaws made the bad guy list. But he was just being himself. He wasn't being bad, he was just being a shark. Well, anyhow, the top movie hero, of course, was Gregory Peck in Atticus Finch, To Kill a Mockingbird. And very interesting because that guy, I mean, he was a real hero, but he was an attorney who was fighting in a courtroom, you know, for the sake of justice in a very unpopular case, defending a guy who had been charged, and he was innocent of the charge. And, you know, he was villainized by just about everybody in town, but he stayed the course and did that which he needed to do single-mindedly to practice justice and fair play. And he did that. That's what the gospel reading is about today. It's about staying on course and practicing justice, fair play, and I will use a new word now for you for the moment, the word shalom. Now you all know shalom as a way to say hi, shalom. You know it maybe as the word peace. In the Bible you'll find the word shalom being used a whole lot more times than you will know because it's not that often translated by the word peace. It's translated by other words, which come up in the scheme of that. Things like fed, drink of water, heal, truth. There's at least 40 to 45 words which are used in place of the word peace to describe shalom, which should tell you that there's more going on there with that whole idea than just the absence of war or the absence of conflict. When Jesus was talking, of course, on that day, he started off by quoting Isaiah 61 about freeing the captives and the oppressed and those in prison. And he did that And you then used an example, which is the gospel reading this morning, and I'll say Naaman instead of Naaman. Naaman is correct, but I'll say Naaman just because it's easier for me to wrap my tongue around in my concussion state.
Good excuse.
Thank you. I thought that was pretty good too. A little sympathy. Yeah, that works, right? Yes. Okay. Now, Naaman was a top general in Syria. And he had a policy that was very, very well thought out. He would raid and invade Israel every 2 years. Smart guy, however. He didn't destroy the houses. He didn't kill or take all the livestock, and he did not burn all the fields or take all the grain. He would always leave enough so that the following year, the people would have enough in Israel to eat, then they would be able to replant and have enough livestock left to have babies. And then in 2 years, he would come back again. So Israel was his breadbasket. And it was very, very wonderfully done, so wonderfully well done, that Naaman became the top military general in Syria. Now, problem came along for him. He got a skin disease, leprosy. Leprosy is a general word that covers all kinds of ground in skin diseases. And in any case, it was very debilitating for him. It was painful. The variety that he had hurt painful, and he was also had to stay away from crowds. He couldn't come into to be close when they were figuring out a military campaign. Nobody wanted to use him, of course, for his advice anymore, because in that day that was considered to be just such a horrible, horrible thing to have, that he was just simply either going to give it to everybody who was around him, or he would be considered to be untrustworthy because he couldn't think straight. So, in any case, one of his slave girls, a Jewish girl, 15-year-old, went and told him, look, there's a guy in Israel that can heal you. So Naaman sent an emissary over there to Elisha, was the guy's name. And Elisha said, go to the Jordan River, dunk yourself 7 times. That's pretty much the equivalent in that day of the doctor saying to you today, take 2 aspirin, call me tomorrow. It's that quick and disappointing, but that's what Naaman was told. So his advisors talked him into it. He went over there and dunked in the Jordan River. He did it at the low time of the year when it was more muddy, and he was really PO'd about that, because he was told by Elisha that if you're going to be healed, you have to dunk your whole body, including your head, in there. So he did it 7 times, comes out of the water, and he's healed. Go figure. So he goes home, tries to pay Elisha for the services. Elisha says, no, I want nothing. This is what I believe about my God. Now hear this, because this is about you now. This is what I believe about God, Elisha says. In addition, I believe that God gives the free gifts of life and shalom to all people throughout the entire world. Okay, you got that? Free gifts of his love and shalom through the whole world. Go home, Naaman. And Naaman went home. Interesting thing, from that little event of shalom, remember I told you shalom can mean any of 40 or 45 words. The event of healing. New life for Naaman. From there, shalom spreads. Because Naaman, who's in charge, once again, of all of the invasions and military campaigns, is able then to persuade the king for a time of not invading Israel. However, that ends soon enough, because all of a sudden the king thinks that there's something addle-headed about Naaman, and picks somebody else to be his top general. So Naaman sends word through one of his servants every time Syria is going to invade Israel. And so Israel is able to meet Syria, the Syrian army, at a river each time. So there was no war for 20 to 25 years. You see how this shalom thing works? One little minor event of healing And all of a sudden, then, in gratefulness, Naaman begins then to practice another kind of shalom. A more expansive kind, regionally, in which all of a sudden there's a whole bunch of young men who don't have to die because of the decisions of the older men in leadership. There is shalom, peace, in which people can live freely and without worry. That's the point that Jesus was trying to make to the people in Nazareth, his hometown, by talking about that particular story. That shalom is much more expansive and much more encompassing of the whole world than it is of any one singular event. And because of that, Naaman did make a confession of faith. And he did say, I believe in God. I believe in Yahweh, was the name Yahweh, was the name that was used to describe God in that day. So Naaman became a believer and was able to practice that shalom belief of believers for some years. So you have now a description of shalom. And the other reason that Jesus used Elisha and Naaman as examples in that story is because of their single-minded focus on what it means to be a person of faith. A person of faith is one who practices shalom in a single-minded fashion. Come heck or high water, always the practice of shalom. God loves you. I believe that. I will love you and pass that on. And that is why the word shalom has so many different translations involved with it. I had an interesting conversation with somebody from our congregation a few weeks ago who was supposed to be going to the doctor and didn't want to go to the doctor. And her husband was all bummed out about it because she wouldn't go. So he asked me to call her, which I did. And you know, some of you do. You know, mouth, run at the mouth. Never go to the doctor. You know, if you want to die, do it on your own time. Don't put everybody else through it before you have to. You know, that kind of thing. Well, it was true. You know. And so finally, you know, she did go to the doctor. She's going to be fine. You know, after some other surgery and things like that. My husband and all family are very happy about that. But you see, the way in which shalom works, shalom also gets translated by the word truth and trustworthiness. And it was only because of the trustworthiness which she and her husband and extended family and kids had in each other that they were able to pull this thing together to make it happen. So you have another event of shalom. Interesting thing. You know, from that one little event of shalom, you can see the positive impact that that has on the extended family, huh? That they all participated in saying, we want you to live. And we're pulling for you. Things that you just take for granted in family life most of the time. But sometimes it matters that you say it. That's the kind of thing that Jesus was talking to the people in Nazareth about. To be a follower and a person of shalom is to be a person of faith. And to be a person of faith is to be a practitioner of shalom. And shalom can mean all kinds of things in the context of enhancing and being with a person in the hard and difficult times of their lives. Further than that, you'll note the reaction of the crowd in Nazareth at that day. They were ready to kill Jesus, as a matter of fact. That was just the first try. He got up and started to walk out of town, and then they were going to push him off the cliff. Did you catch that reading that George, as you were doing it, George, picked, right? They were going to push him off the edge of the cliff. Nazareth does sit up on the hill, and there is a place where they could just pick him up and just give him the old heave. But he was able to walk through the midst of them, because there was just, in that crowd, and this is again where you and I come in, there was a maybe. Maybe the guy's not crazy. Maybe he's got a point. Maybe there's something there. It was just enough of a maybe that they hesitated long enough to let him go free. A wait-and-see kind of attitude. And we all know people who are living that way. We all know people who are living the maybe, who just can't quite get themselves into the idea that by being focused single-mindedly on care and love of God and neighbor and self, that they can really have an impact on life. But they can, and you know it as well as I do. From one healing to the ending of a regional conflict for 20 or 25 years, that's pretty nice. You know, it's very interesting also that somehow the world, even with all of the insanity that we hear from MSNBC and Fox News, bless us all and save us from that mess. The fact of the matter is that there are less people being killed in war than there had been in the previous century. Somehow or other, even with all of the varieties of disasters which are occurring and the varieties of wars and conflict going on, there are less people dying each year due to war and that kind of violence. Which means that when you think about God working in the world, which he did through Naaman in a regional way in 900 BC, that God is still active and working through shalom in our day. And you can see that by the reduction of the conflict and violence throughout the world. There are signs of goodness in the world and of men and women really practicing the task and the dedication to shalom. Well, that's your calling and mine, to practice shalom, to practice that in any way and in all of the times of our lives. The reason Elisha didn't want to get caught up in the payment deal with Naaman was because it would have deterred him from staying focused on his true task, which was the practice of well-being and shalom, passing it on to others, and hopefully encouraging them to pass it on to others still. You know, that calls for a single-minded focus. You got to stay with that all the time. And that was the other reason that Jesus used him and Naaman as examples of what it means to be people of shalom. Well, that's your gift. That's your calling. And by the way, what color is your gecko, Jake? What color is the gecko on TV?
Green.
Of course it is. What color is your gecko?
Green.
Hmm? It's purple, yellow, and black. So there. Just thought I'd pass that on to you. Now, the reason that I mention this at all is that when you think about the world in which you live and the varieties of creatures that inhabit it, and the gifts that have been placed all around us, that is where you're going to be able to explore the whole notion of shalom as a gift from God. Who knew there was more than one kind of gecko? Ask yourself the question, which I did, by the way, Jake. Why? The only answer is God just decided. Just for fun. Just because. And there you have it. His grace, because he loves you and he loves the world. Why let the world destroy itself? No. Shalom. That's what you bring. You're savers of life and builders of it and willers of it and single-mindedly focused on saving the world in which we live. and you start it and do it best here, locally, one at a time, and let it build.
Amen.